Hi there, my name's Dawn Bonfield, and it's fantastic to be with you celebrating International Women in Engineering Day 2021. Thank you for inviting me back to be with you, and I really have appreciated all the work that you've done as an organisation, the She Can Engineer group of you who are doing all this fantastic work, and how much you've supported Inwed in the past few years. So this year, of course, we're celebrating Engineering Heroes. And this is a topic that's very close to my own heart. I was inspired to look back at the history of women in engineering when I was at the Women's Engineering Society, and we had that 100-year period of history that we can draw from. The stories that I've been discovering as part of this work that I do around Magnificent Women, which is a social enterprise that looks at the history of women in engineering, really does inspire me. And you know, they are fascinating stories, and I think they're fabulous things to be able to pass on to the next generation. Storytelling, either from the past or from the present, is a really relatively unexplored dimension of engineering, and yet the personal stories and the contexts in which they're set are a real gateway for many girls and women into the engineering sector, where they can see themselves reflected in, things that have people's stories that have happened in the past or are happening in the present. I think that in the past we've had a bit of a blinkered view of what makes a good engineer. I remember once listening to an engineering lecturer who'd done a survey of his new graduate intake of engineers, and he'd asked them what had motivated them to come into engineering. And he had a series of questions like, were you motivated by the fact that you've got a parent in engineering, or that you did physics and chemistry, or that you always liked taking things apart when you were younger? And he said, there were a group of other people, he said mostly women, in fact, who didn't answer any of the questions to say that that's how they'd been motivated into engineering. He said, it completely baffles me what they're even doing here, how they got here and what they're doing here. And I thought, well, you know what? They've been attracted into a profession because of a different set of reasons than you have been. And, that's exactly what we want in engineering. We need that diversity, and we need people to think differently, to see engineering differently. So we're not just one set of people with one set of traits. And if you look at things like the Myers-Briggs personality traits of what makes a good engineer, then it often points to one set of people who are likely to be good at engineering. But that's really like, in my opinion, it's like baking a cake with just one ingredient. You just do not get a very good cake. You need a mix of ingredients in order to think that you can produce something that appeals to a mix of different people. So, some people like sultanas in their scones, some people like chili in their scones, some people are gluten-free, some people are vegetarians. You get the picture. We need an array of diverse thinking people in the sector so that we can produce engineering that is relevant for the whole world, really. We also need people who, like being in the spotlight, who like kind of taking that accolade as an engineering hero. But equally, we need people who are in the back room, who are very good at the detailed calculations. And we work best when we work in teams and we have these different skills that we can put together. So for me, that's what engineering heroes look like. And then we get back, I think, to that question of, well, how do we attract more of these engineering heroes? I think that comes down to being intentional in our desire to do that, being accountable, allocating resources, setting targets, measuring and publishing our results. I think we also have to be bold in our intentions as well. And I don't think that we can just rely on incremental progress and hope that we're going to get there in the end. We have to be more disruptive, and we have to make these bigger commitments to change. Otherwise, I think not only will we take a long time to get there, but we will start to drift back and we'll lose some of the gains that we've made, especially, now that we're in a position where we can build back better we can make sure that we're building back in a way that is more equal as well. So we have to keep on telling these stories about engineering heroes. Let's learn from our history, but also be ready to tell stories from the present as well. And be ready to tell our own stories. You know, we're all in engineering. We have to see ourselves as engineering heroes. And we have opportunities to tell these stories to our friends, you know, or other people at the school gate, for example, friends' children's. You know, make sure you know your own story and be prepared to tell that, because that's what will encourage the next generation. So we are what engineering heroes look like. We have our stories to tell, and we need to be bold about telling them. So I just want to say thank you again for inviting me today. Have a great event and a fantastic International Women in Engineering Day when it comes. And yes, do take the time to think about your own story and how to tell that. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, Dawn, for that introduction. My name is Yasmin Ali. I'm a chemical engineer, and I'm an Energy Innovation Programme Manager at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So that's the government's energy department. And with me today is Liz Hillier, who is a materials and corrosion engineer and also a principal consultant at DNV. And we are live at the Institution of Civil Engineers, so it's very exciting for us to be outside and somewhere else and not at home behind our computer screen. So it's International Women in Engineering Day in about a week's time. And we want to get to know each other's engineering story, and we would like your help. So please do send your questions in, and we will answer them throughout the chat. So we'll be talking to each other for the next 50 minutes or so, and we would love to hear from you. So please do join in with the conversation. So let's get this started. Liz, can you tell me where your engineering story began? So how did you get to where you are now?
Thanks, Yasmin. I think I never really had a plan. I just was a curious person. So I suppose typical kid, given Lego for Christmas, tip the Lego out of the box, play with the box, make a rocket out of the box. Oh, there's Lego to play with now as well. And that just evolved over time. So I became curious in how things worked, how you could make them work better. And then I had this moment that I realised that quite a lot of my family were sort of engineers, ranging from my dad, who's a mechanical engineer, and ended up specialising in ancient buildings. I married an engineer, and I also found that my grandparents were, they lived through the war. They were very make-do and mend, so they liked to fashion things from stuff they had in cupboards rather than buying something new. And I suppose it just ignited a passion in me for doing that too. How about you? You have a very impactful job. Why did you end up there, and how do you stay motivated doing that?
I will answer that in a moment, but I want to know what kind of stuff your grandparents were fashioning before we get into that.
So many things. So my grandmother had a knee operation, but she was super into gardening. So she sort of fashioned a comfy kneeler so that she could still go down and do the weeding herself. And then I realised that actually she did that with lots of things. So pots and pans were a bit awkward for her to hold when she had rheumatism later. So she then re-engineered handles and things so she could pick them up. Just a wealth of examples of little practical things every day that made a difference.
Yeah, so, kind of like a biomechanical, the original biomechanical engineer, really.
I guess so, just born out of pragmatism and needing to get stuff done. So, you know, I guess we can't all invent the rocket to go to the moon, but we can make incremental improvements with everything we do all the time, and she was quite good at that as an individual. So quite inspiring. One of my heroes, perhaps.
Yep, that is the theme for today, engineering heroes. So here's the first one. Yeah, so for me, I think it was a bit of an accident, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Got a leaflet in the post from the Why Not ChemEng campaign, which was advertising chemical engineering careers, and I've got a habit of just making slightly misinformed decisions, and it looked attractive to me at the time, and I was like, I'll go and study this thing and see what happens. And it's worked out quite well. So I did my degree, and during my degree did some work experience in a power station and discovered the energy sector and really wanted to be in that. And I think I always wanted to have a job where I helped people, and I thought that would be being a doctor, because that's what my parents do. So that's what I applied for university, but didn't get in, and then ended up doing engineering. And then, I realised that actually everyone uses energy, and if I'm working in a job where I'm making sure everyone has a secure supply of energy, then I'm helping people in some way. That's kind of how I got into engineering and into energy, and I've been working for 10 years now, or just over 10 years, and I got really interested in innovation and was quite concerned about climate change, and that's what led to me working in government and running these innovation programs, which is what I do now.
That's fantastic. You must meet quite a lot of people with personalities in your job. I think we find in engineering it attracts a whole breadth of people, which is fantastic. I mean, Dawn mentioned it, didn't she? Sort of the ingredients in a cake. You can't just have one thing. Certainly engineering has a whole melting pot of different types of people. Do you find that the personalities in your team and department help fuel the innovation? Do they sort of improve the innovative environment?
Yeah, I think so. And if I compare my current job with previous jobs I've had with more traditional engineering company or an energy company, there's a much bigger mix of people. So there are a lot more female engineers where I am now, which is really great, and people who are younger as well. So there's a mix of ages, and also engineers from different backgrounds. So not just people who've worked in energy, but people who've come from like the aerospace sector, or different scientists. So somebody in my team is a chemist, and it's just really great to be able to kind of talk to all of those different people and bring all those ideas together and run these innovation programs. What's it like for you? Is that kind of a similar scenario? Or?
I think so. I think I've had different roles in the company I work in currently, and I've also lived abroad. So I was based in the Middle East for 3 years, and I think the light bulb moment for me was that it's all people based. So whatever job you do, wherever you are, it's all people based, and trying to get the best out of people to get the most creative or best possible solution is about interacting with those people well and trying to draw the best out of them. So when I was based in Aberdeen for 8 years, great place Aberdeen, but weather-wise not so great. You have to generate your own sunshine inside sometimes. There was an amazing guy who was sort of towards the end of his career, and he was always very good at sort of talking to the quieter members within a team and drawing their ideas in, and that inclusion was so powerful, really great, because it did get the best out of people. And I really admire that as a characteristic, team leaders who can do that and listen well to everybody's viewpoint. Obviously, you can't all come up with the solution, you have to do it together. So I really value that, and I'm pleased I see that you're a good team leader and that you would encourage that in your team to get the best solution, whatever the problem was, energy being a significant one.
I try to do my best, but I definitely try and get quieter people's opinions, and sometimes also I find I'm quite conscious if I'm talking too much and I should just stop and ask someone else to step in. I think it's you over the course of my career and probably yours, I've seen how other people do things and like picked up good habits and tried not to pick up bad habits. Sure. So I wonder if you've got any stories from your first job, things that you learnt?
Well, I think there's a little bit about curiosity that perpetuates, and one of the things that I learned I would encourage other people to do is always ask a question. So if you're sitting in a meeting and you don't understand something, or you're not quite sure, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because if you're not clear, somebody else will not be clear. So flag it, ask opinion, and engage with people and get that feedback. So that's something I was encouraged to do, and it certainly stood me in good stead. Maybe I asked too many questions, but I think that's something that sort of continued through my career and has been quite helpful. How about you? Did you have any top tips from people?
I not quite top tips, but I remember working with different types of people and trying to stay open to kind of how different people operate. And I worked on some stuff to do with innovation when I was working in oil and gas, and the person I was working with had Asperger's, and a lot of people kind of struggled to understand him, but I found it amazing working with him. He was one of the smartest people I've ever met, and you just had to, listen and not be upset, because he could be quite direct, but didn't mean it in any kind of mean way. So I think being aware of like how different people operate is really helpful, and can make these engineering solutions even better if we're including all sorts of different people.
Absolutely. I think maybe any of you listening, you could sort of type in some of your experiences and we could share them with the group. That would be great. I'm not sure now, the role I have, I sort of have applied engineering function, if you like, sort of looking at buying and selling assets for investors. And it's really interesting the language people use that they think is normal. I think something that you sort of get used to working in engineering, there's quite a lot of terminology that people don't necessarily straight away, it takes a while to absorb that and have it in your language set. So I think something I'm quite good at now is maybe not using those 3-letter acronyms and rolling them off and putting people off. So trying to have open dialogue rather than using technical terms until they've been explained, so that people are engaged in the conversation. So that's something else that I've learned quite recently, working with banking and engineering functions together, trying to talk to each other. So that's been quite interesting. I didn't realise there was a whole engineering language that you were taught at university, but there most definitely is. And if people hadn't had that study period, they're not necessarily going to grab it straight away. So it's important to try and break that down and make it accessible for people. We have a question. Thank you.
That's exciting.
So excuse us while we look at our iPads. So somebody called Dana has said, what actually were your first jobs in engineering, and how has the landscape changed for women in engineering from then to now?
Okay,
Would you
shall
like
I
to
go
go
first?
first?
Yeah. So my first job after graduating was at Ratcliffe-on-Soar coal-fired power station. So I was there for 6 months as part of a graduate scheme. It was huge and felt quite old-fashioned. All coal-fired power stations in the UK are going to be closing quite soon, so that will be behind us. But it was really amazing as well, and I met some great people who worked there who taught me quite a lot. So yeah, it was a kind of a mixed experience for me, I would say, of being somewhere really new and exciting, but also feeling a bit like this is too stuck in its way for me to change, which was frustrating.
It's really interesting. It's sort of quite a significant sort of change, really. There must be a little bit of sadness in a way, but also positivity looking forward to see the new innovation that's coming in and different ways of doing things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I'm not like saying I hate coal-fired power stations or anything, because they've obviously served us so well over the last 100 years or whatever it is. They have enabled us to live the life that we live now. So I'm very grateful to coal and coal-fired power stations, but I think it's time to move on. And, you know, Ratcliffe and other coal-fired power stations are looking at the next steps and what are they going to do to adapt and to get on board with the energy transition.
Brilliant. My first job was actually as a research chemist at a company that at the time was called Wellcome, that was taken over by Glaxo, and the merger is now Glaxo Wellcome. And they made cancer treatment drugs. So being a naive youngster, I thought pharmaceutical companies were evil and, you know, they tortured animals and they were all horrible and stuff. So it was a summer placement job. So I went there and I asked to go and look around the animal house to see how they were treated. All the bunnies came over to the handlers gave them names. It was all very soft. And fundamentally I understood what important work it was and how much time and brain power it took to get new drugs to market to help people. So again, it was an understanding of that more so. I think having lived through COVID, I'm so grateful for people who work in that industry, innovating and supporting the health of humankind. So that was my first job. And then my first real job was working in oil and gas. I'm ashamed of myself sitting with you here today. And I still tinker with oil and gas too. But amazing industry, a lot of construction work, a lot of good stuff to supply the energy market. So an amazing industry to have a toehold of appreciation in. Yes, so that was my first job. I hope that answered your question, Dana.
I think that is another industry that has, again, enabled us to get to where we are today. So yeah, it's obviously has pretty detrimental impacts on the planet, but without oil and gas, where would we be?
It's transitioning. I think certainly some of the majors are taking it very seriously. Maybe not at the pace that everyone has patience for, but they are evolving. And as you say, you know, it's infrastructure we have. We were talking about this before you lovely people joined us. We were talking about sort of transitioning to other sort of fuel sources, using existing infrastructure to do that, etc., etc. So the oil and gas industry has a footprint. And if we can use that wisely, it will continue to be useful for mankind, even if it's not having sort of typical oil and gas going through it. It's still there for use for us moving forward.
Got a question for you. What was the link? I guess you studied materials engineering. What was the link between that and doing the placement that you mentioned? How does that translate?
I'm from southwest London. Well, southeast London actually, Bromley to be precise. And lots of my friends at A-level age were going into banks to do sort of work experience, etc., etc. And I was quite curious about the local pharmaceutical company who were based sort of down the road. So I wrote to them and said, please, can I have a job for the summer? You don't have to pay me, I'd just like to come and learn about it. And I found it fascinating. It was a really interesting introduction to working life. Maybe not a standard route, if you like, but then at university I became interested in other things, and eventually when I did my PhD I did it for the MOD, looking at hydrogen embrittlement, which we were talking about earlier as well for hydrogen. So it's just this sort of curiosity piece, I guess. No plan, it's just sort of evolved. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, the very nice man who ran Lab 55 was prepared to have this grotty girl turn up for 2 weeks and help them clean test tubes and things and learn a little bit along the way. So, yeah, it was a good experience, a very good experience.
Just to pick up on what you said earlier, MOD is the Ministry of Defence.
Oh my goodness, I did it, didn't I? Thank you. Okay, pound in the pot. Thank you. So we have another question from Stimazing Limited. Hello, Stimazing Limited. Thank you for the great conversation. Well, thank you for joining it. Bless you. What advice would you give to women engineers starting out in their careers now? That's quite a big question.
It is a big question, and I think that's probably Alex. So hi, Alex, from Stimazing. What advice would I give? If you have an answer, go for it while I think of one.
So I guess find something you're passionate in and follow that passion. When you enjoy what you do, the day passes much quicker, much quicker. Gets a lot more out of it. Be a bit brave with what you do as well. So challenge yourself and acknowledge all the stuff that you do well. And learn from that. So never be scared to ask a question. No such thing as a stupid question.
Excellent advice. And I have thought, just kind of thinking back to myself, I think I always feel a bit of like decision overload, like there's too much choice. So if you study chemical engineering, there's thousands of different jobs, different industries you can go into. And I just struggled to pick one of those. And I think I would say, try something out. And if you don't like it, you can leave and go and do something else. But chances are you probably will like it. So that would be my advice. Try not to worry too much about making the right decision.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. Just decide and have a go. Mm-hmm. Be a bit brave about it. And remember when you're in an interview situation that you're also testing them out. It's not just about them testing you out, it's got to be a two-way fit. So ask questions if there's things you want to know.
It took me a really long time to learn, I think, for a very long time. I just thought that I was the one being tested, but now if I go to a job interview, then I'm definitely thinking about it more selfishly, like, am I going to like these people and will I like this job? So that's, again, very good advice.
I think it's fair enough though, isn't it? It's, the organisation gets the best out of you if you're happy. So being happy and engaged in what you do is really, really important. Mm-hmm. Really, really important. So, we have another question. So excited. Thank you for sending your question in, Holly. Great to hear about your career journeys. Well, thank you. My bank manager also thanks you. It's good to get paid for what you love. Would love to know what risks you've taken in your careers that you think have really paid off.
I've got an answer for that.
Oh, go.
Which is quite recent. So I when I graduated, I joined a graduate scheme and stayed with that company, and I was there for 7 years. And then at that point, I felt like I need to do something else, and I just wasn't feeling very happy in the job that I was doing. So I decided to quit without another job to go to, which conventional advice is don't do that. But I assessed my situation and I could afford to do that for a little while. So I just quit, and everyone told me I was a bit crazy or brave. I think sometimes when people say brave, they mean you're absolutely mental. So yeah, I did. I spent some time and I wrote down what I want from my next job and really thought about what is it that I want to spend my days doing. What does that job look like? And then went from there and started applying and having conversations with people. And it took 9 months, but by the end of that period of time, I had got a job at Bays, where I am now, and it really fits with the things that I wanted to do when I left my previous job. So it was a scary thing to do and a risk, because some days I was thinking, will I ever get another job again, or is this it? Am I done? But it's paid off. So that's my recent risk.
But as you say, it paid off.
It did, yeah.
I think that thoughtful journey of working out what you really want to do is so important. You can be in a job and just tick along, but now it sounds like you've got real passion about what you're doing, so that's fantastic. I think for me, I haven't been a real big risk taker. I suppose the biggest challenge I had for myself was when we moved to the Middle East, because it was a very different environment. But again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I went from the North Sea, at best 5 degrees temperature zone, to sort of 50. And the size of the infrastructure, we were based in Qatar. The size of the infrastructure there is just phenomenal. and very different working environment. But I learned so much. It was really good, and it comes back to this thing about people are people, and they have a passion and they want to get stuff done, and you just draw upon that. So moving countries for me was quite a big deal, but it was a great experience. And very fortunate that the company I worked for at the time, who I still work for, the conversation went something like this: Donald, you know we've got an office in Qatar. Well, Gary's job's moving to Qatar for 3 years. Would it be possible for me to go with him? Yeah, sure, let's. So don't ever be scared to put your hand up and say what you want and ask the questions.
Did you have to like work yourself up to having... Sometimes like when I feel like I'm going to have a conversation that's going to be difficult, and then when I actually have it, it turns out to be very easy, and it's all been in my head the whole time.
Absolutely. I think that's another thing that we might come on to, and maybe some of the people watching would be interested to sort of contribute to, is the whole confidence piece. So you strike me as quite a confident person. You made that leap of faith to your dream job, which you're flourishing in. So what was that moment that you sort of thought to yourself, nope, I know what I want, and when did you realise that? When did you realise that you had what you wanted and you were living the dream?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it took a while for me to feel confident as an engineer, and I always felt like I didn't get it as fast as other people. So when I was at university, some things I felt like I don't understand this, others around me get it quicker. And that continues a bit into working life. But I think, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 years in was when I let go of all of those thoughts, and because I'd been doing it for so long, realised that actually I'm here, I've done it, like I can obviously do this, people are giving me jobs to do and I'm managing to do them. I also got my chartership, which was quite a big thing for me, just to be accepted by that peer group and to have that stamp of you're a chartered engineer. So yeah, I'd say probably 7, 8 years in, and now I feel quite comfortable and confident in what I do. And I think I know that there's no pressure for me to know everything. I just have to know who to ask or how to break down the problem so I can solve it. I don't think no one expects you to know absolutely everything, and it's fine. Like I say, I don't know quite a lot. Like I don't know, I'll go away and find out. That's my go-to.
Yeah.
And then I go away and find out and then learn something.
Well, there you go. That's good. You finished the story. So I think saying that you don't know is quite important. Maybe that's another top tip for people, that admitting you don't know, but having the curiosity to find out and resolve that is totally fine. I think for me, so this is a bit of a personal story, but it was probably when my children had some friends around for a play date. This was before COVID, and a toy got broken, and one of the people visiting was very upset. So my children, who are actually quite nice human beings, thank goodness, turned to him and said, "Don't worry, Mummy's an engineer, she can fix it." And then my youngest chips in with, "She knows how to use sellotape." And I was like, great, I've made it. I know how to use sellotape. But sometimes it's as simple as that, isn't it? That you work it all out together as a team. There's somebody who's got certain skills and they can fill in parts of it, and other people fill in the rest, and you do it all together.
You've got some validation from some small
absolutely
people.
Some small people said I could use sellotape, so that gave me confidence in my career choices. So is there anybody out there who has any stories that they'd like to share with us? We'd love to hear from you if you do. So
do we have any more questions?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Shall we? Yeah, I guess, what about heroes, which is the theme of today?
It is really. Yeah. So I think you've already heard that my family are my heroes, absolutely. I was talking to our marketing director just a couple of days ago there, saying, I'm coming on this tell me what to do so I don't mess up. She's like, just sit up straight. There's a lovely man behind the camera who can't see who gave me the same advice, so I'm trying to sit up straight for you all. She was saying, who are your engineering heroes? And then she's telling me about this amazing lady called Lucy Hughes, who looked at waste, fish waste, so skin and scales, and turned that into a one-use sort of plastic, if you like, recyclable plastic for sandwich bags. And I was like, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So she thought about a waste product that would just be thrown away, landfill, etc., and gave it a second life. And I thought to myself, that's actually a little bit heroic, you know, that when you're putting your sandwiches in that, you sort of think to yourself, great, I'm not polluting the environment, I'm doing something positive. And yes, she won a design award, I think, but I'd never heard of her, and I was terribly ashamed of myself. Other people, I suppose, all the people who'd helped sort of develop vaccines and things on such a short time frame recently have been phenomenal. How about you, Yasmin?
Yeah, there's a lady who is a chemical engineer and she works at Bayes, so Rana Erdly Patel. She's working with the vaccine task force.
Fantastic.
So yeah, she's one of those people. But also I remember meeting her years ago when I think I must have been a graduate at the time, and she gave a presentation about negotiating pay, and I was like, oh my God, I would never think to do this. And she was just giving tips about how you would go about having that conversation, and it's pretty badass really to watch that, and it was something I'd never considered, so that's, you know, pretty impressive, I think.
Fantastic.
But yeah, there are like thousands and thousands of engineering people I would consider engineering heroes who we don't know. So yeah, I'm trying to get to know them, so I've been writing a series for the Chemical Engineer magazine, and trying to find chemical engineers who have maybe slightly unexpected jobs. And they're all amazing. I think I've spoken to about 25 so far. And one of them is a lady who has worked in the chemical sector for the last 40 years, but she also writes crime fiction.
Wow.
I know, yeah. So her name's Fiona MacLeod. Yeah, that's just one of many, many amazing engineers out there.
That's fantastic. We have another question.
Exciting.
So from a lady called Elizabeth. Nice name, Elizabeth. What are the future challenges that you want to tackle?
I mean, energy is obviously a big one for me, and I really want to look back and say I played a positive part in this energy transition, and I helped. I don't think I could solve it all by myself, obviously, but I want to play some part in that. And if not that, if at some point in the future I want to move on to something else, I'm also really interested in waste and how we manage that, and just that whole kind of circular economy, to use a bit of a buzzword. But we live on a planet with finite resources.
Yes.
But we don't treat it like that. We use stuff as if it's never ending. So that problem really interests me as well, that challenge.
Gosh, I wish you'd met my grandmother. She was all about make, do, amend, recycling, upcycling. She'd be considered very woke these days.
She sounds great.
Yeah, she's fantastic. So I think I kind of concur with your thoughts that thinking about sort of climate change, how we manage our resources better, is something that we'd like to do more of. As I maybe mentioned, I work with investors, so sort of giving them good technical advice to make sound investments so that industries stay productive and think sustainably is really important. So I would like to continue to do that. It's not a one-stop shop, is it? You have to keep going with it. But yeah, I think that's a thing that's now and certainly in the future that will continue to be really important.
Yeah, I think I tend to not plan ahead too much, so I don't have any big goals, and I'm quite open to whatever comes next. So something might come up in a few years' time that I become really excited and passionate about, and it might be something that I've never thought about before. So yeah, I'm kind of open to new challenges as well.
I think that's very, very good. It's a curiosity thing again, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, I guess the other side, as well as the technical side, is around increasing diversity in engineering and just telling people out there who don't know about engineering how amazing of a career it is, so that they are able to make an informed choice about it.
Yeah, agreed. It's really important. I think not everybody knows it's so accessible, and it most definitely is. It's not the dusty profession I thought it potentially was before I joined it. It's full of normal people who are curious and maybe late for the bus like you or I would be, but turn up at work and really enjoy what they do. So I suppose if we talk about characteristics that engineers would have, what would be your 3 words that you'd pick?
Oh,
engineering characteristics.
I'm going to do that thing where I answer a different question because it's something you just said. But that characteristic of people enjoying what they do, and that's something that I've definitely noticed in engineering. It's like people go to work because they want to be there and they're genuinely excited about what they're doing, and it's not just a job. And it's so nice to work with people like that. So I think that's probably an important characteristic of engineers. So I don't know if it happens because they're engineers or, you know what I mean. I don't know if it's like a circular thing.
I do. I think generally wanting to make things better is a characteristic I've seen. So, you know, societal improvement, if you like. From the Victorian engineers surrounding us in this amazing room. There is a fantastic chandelier in here, by the way. It's absolutely huge. To sort of nowadays and thinking about the technology in the way that we communicate that enables people who might have felt very isolated during lockdown but were able to FaceTime and talk to people and feel a little bit more engaged with society while we're sort of in a different working environment. So that's all great, the societal thing. But I think also the diligence to do hard work and really work on your passion to get the outcome you want. So engineering, we know, is all about compromise. There's never an ideal solution, but there's the best solution. And that process and being passionate enough to follow that process all the way through, I think, is a characteristic I see in engineers that maybe it doesn't happen in every career path.
Yeah, I guess I haven't. I've worked a lot with engineers, so it's hard to compare it to what other people are like. But yeah, maybe, I don't know, you've worked with bankers, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I work with bankers, and my big brother's actually an evil lawyer, so he's the black sheep of the family. So yeah, it's interesting to see other people's perspectives. I would say every person who's passionate about their career works hard. I'm not saying they don't, but it's to push through to problem solve, and that's maybe the thing that's sort of slightly different about engineers. Their problems we're trying to solve are maybe slightly different to the ones that other career paths would have. So Emily, great name, my daughter's called Emily. Just to counter one of the previous questions, are there any career risks that you have taken that didn't really work for you, and how did you deal with that?
Ones that didn't work. I've had jobs that I didn't enjoy. And yeah, I can't think of a specific decision that I've made that's resulted in that. But yeah, so I've had jobs where I was sort of started and I'm like, this is probably not quite for me. I try to work through it and figure out why it doesn't feel right and see if I can fix those things. And then if not, it's probably time to think of something else and move on. But that's not really happened too many times.
Yeah, I think probably the same for me. I've either been very fortunate or just stupid. Good luck. I don't know. I've had a particular job task, if you like, so a particular project that has maybe been very challenging, I haven't enjoyed, sort of clashed with people on it, that sort of thing. But there hasn't really been anything that I haven't got a benefit from. you learn an awful lot on a bad job.
Yeah, I know. Agree with that, because I think if I am in a situation that isn't great, then I always think, what is it that's happening here that I don't like, and how can I avoid that in future? Or if it's problems with people, then I think about how they're behaving and how it's making me feel, and trying to log that memory so that I make sure that I never ever do that in future. So I think I always learn something from those experiences.
Absolutely. I think something that one of my mentors said to me once, which is really good advice that I don't do enough, is every couple of months just sort of acknowledge the good and bad that's happened, and learn from it and leave it there and just move on, which is really good advice. So I would encourage all you to do that and follow it more adherently than I do.
A little calendar meeting for yourself to do that.
I think sometimes, I don't know if it's just females or maybe it's just me, because I've never been a boy, so I don't know what it would be like. We have maybe a little bit of self-doubt. Certainly early career, I was a little bit nervous. I see now, which is really pleasing, the graduates who are coming through so confident, so confident. Maybe that's one of the things I've noticed that's changed most. Really very good asking questions, insightful questions, putting their hand up, asking things. It's phenomenal change from when I started and I was a little mousy person. I didn't want to ask anything at all. So some of that was self-doubt, some of that was nervousness that I was going to ask the wrong thing. And then meeting a few people who are sort of late career people, giving me advice to just keep going, ask questions. There's no such thing as a daft question. Really encouraged me to gain a little bit of confidence. When you have wobbly moments, because you have quite an impactful job, so you must have the odd wobbly moment, what do you do to sort of encourage yourself to power through that?
I allow myself to, I sometimes get things wrong, and instead of beating myself up about it, I think about how to solve that situation. I think I try and remind myself that everyone has their own stuff going on, so they're not watching me and analysing every single word I'm saying all of the time. So you can get away with quite a lot, I think.
Absolutely. It's funny you should say that. My sister-in-law's a clinical psychologist, and before I married my husband, I met her, and I was terrified to talk in case I said something, and she sort of advised Gary that, oh no, she's absolutely proper mental, don't go anywhere near her. Then I realised, since I've got to know her, she's a lovely woman. She's like, no, that's work. Jesus, there's no way I analyse people when I'm off the clock. Life's just too short. So same thing, a little bit of self-doubt, but in talking to people and having a good conversation, you realise people are just people, and it's much easier. We have another question.
Great, okay.
So, how do we think we can show off our engineering heroes to people outside of our industry? Do we need an engineering Oscars ceremony? I love that idea.
I think the IET's Young Woman Engineer of the Year is not too far away from being an Oscars ceremony. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. There's always some celebrity hosting it, and it's very glamorous and really good fun. I don't know, have you been before?
No, I haven't been.
You should go.
It sounds great.
It's really good. But yeah, I'm not sure on... I think we definitely do need to show off engineering heroes to people outside of engineering. How is another question.
Yeah, talking about it is a very good start. I think talking about it to anybody who'll listen, or we were on a virtual site visit because we couldn't go to site because of COVID restrictions the other week there, and our intern was great. She's phenomenal. She's one of my heroes as well, actually. She's great. She was on the site tour with us, and she was asking questions about, oh, what does that do? Oh, that's a cooling tower. It does this, that, and the other. And just like, oh, you see those from the train when you're going up the coast to Scotland. I was like, I never realised what that was. That's amazing, and it does this. And I'm like, yes, and that's its function. So I think just having a straightforward conversation and explaining things around you is a really good start, because all the things have been made and manufactured by an engineer of some sort.
That's true, yeah.
So.
I think Dawn in her introduction talked about knowing your own story. So you could have like your own elevator pitch for what you do. And I think a lot of engineers just think what they do is normal, but it isn't. And actually you kind of did this earlier when you said you haven't taken any risks, but you were working offshore.
Well, okay.
That's like such a small percentage of people who get to do that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you. You've been offshore too. Yeah.
True, so, but yeah.
So we're 100% hit rate between the two of us.
Yeah, that is very unlikely to happen if you had a random sample of the population.
No, that's true. But I think, it's how you perceive risk as well, isn't it? So something that you're prepared to do, you don't necessarily see as risky. So crossing the road, getting on a plane, all these things are actually quite risky, but people do it every day and don't think twice about it. Hopefully they look twice before they cross the road, but other than that. So yeah, maybe that's the bravery bit. There's a great question in from Kayla. Do you have any advice for newcomers to the industry? As you probably know, it can be very nerve-wracking trying to build on work responsibility. It is, but it is for everybody. So I think it's one step at a time, day by day. What advice would you have? I feel for you very much so. I empathise. I still get nervous about things now. I mean, talking to you guys, obviously, sweaty palms. But what would your advice be?
I think when I first started, I tried to talk to everyone. So not just the people in my team, but I would walk around the site and chat to different people and find out about their jobs. And I quickly realised that people love talking about themselves, and especially engineers who enjoy their job. They'll happily spend the entire day telling you what they do and how things work. So take advantage of that. And then once you do that, then you'll start to spot jobs that need to be done. And if you want to take on more responsibility, you can say, oh, hey, I think this thing needs to be done. Can I do that? And I've done that a couple of times at the start, and that's how you build up that responsibility, I think. And it shows initiative, which is great.
Absolutely. I think conversation is the starting point, isn't it? So don't be scared to talk to people. I've never found, as you said, an engineer who doesn't like talking about their passion. And you learn so much from that. There was a gentleman I worked with in Aberdeen. Oh, this is a story. Maybe I shouldn't share this. I've started now.
It's too late.
Anyway, he was one of the chattiest people. He had amazing war stories. He'd done everything. He'd seen everything. Anyway, he had quite a reputation for being chatty. One day I had politely made a coffee, and I'd sort of reached my threshold and decided the best way to escape was to walk into the girls' loos, which was just sort of opposite the coffee. Anyway, he started coming with me, and then he realised it was the girls' loos, and he stopped, and I shut the door, and I just sort of thought to myself, okay, that's fine. But he was a great mentor for me. Every time I had a question about something, he always had an answer. And because I was curious, he was keen to let me try things. So I think that's really good advice, Jasmine. Holly says, we'd love to know how important your relationships with other women in the field have been through your career. Support, inspiration, etc.
I mean, that's been quite important, I would say. So I know a group of women through the Women's Engineering Society, and that's been really nice just to get to know them and to feel like normal amongst that group.
Yeah.
That's been quite important, I would say.
I think for me, my first boss in my oil and gas job was actually a woman who worked part-time and juggled family and stuff. And I found her really inspirational because she was super organised. I'm not organised at all. I'm relatively organised, but not super organised. And that was quite inspiring because she was very clear about fragmenting what needed to be done now, what could wait, and was very good at prioritizing things. So maybe it was because she was a woman, or maybe it was because she was juggling a lot. But she was very inspirational and inspired me to do more and take more on, because she encouraged me. And she was great. Some of my peer group and some of my team as well. Younger people coming through, just phenomenal. Really enthusiastic, care about what they do. Just great individuals. So loads of people.
I have to say I'd like to get to a stage where we don't have to kind of feel like we need other women around because there's so few of them. And there have been men as well, and just people in general who have been really inspiring and really supported my career. And I try and do that for other people now, and that's quite nice.
Oh, absolutely. I think the sharing piece is so important, isn't it? So I've always asked questions and people have been kind and give answers. It's making sure that you also do that for others as well. Yeah,
and I think actually you have more power than you think you do. So even if you are at the beginning of your career and you're a graduate, you can still support students or engineering students or school students. You will be an inspiration to them, so you can inspire other people into engineering at any time, I would say. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. So this is from Alex. Hi, Alex. She's with her children, one of them age 8, says, what's the favourite thing you've done as an engineer?
Oh, that's a good question to end on. Let's see, I'm trying to see what springs to mind. I think because we've been talking about oil and gas, just getting in a helicopter and going to a platform in the middle of the sea is quite amazing, just because it's so unique and it's such a different environment that most people don't get to go to. And I love doing anything that's random, and that is one of the most random things that you can do.
I think that's a really nice one. I think seeing some plant commissioned for me, so seeing it going from a blank piece of paper to a CAD drawing to manufactured and then installed, that was fantastic. So seeing the Lego be produced and put in place was really quite a privilege. It was only a small mod, but and that happened to be on an offshore platform. That was great. That was really great. So yes, I couldn't sign it, unfortunately. Wasn't allowed.
I think we have only a few minutes left, so I don't know if you have any final thoughts to wrap up, Liz, before we finish.
Well, we just had so many nice questions from you. Thank you so much. Really generous of you to share your thoughts and ask questions of us. I think I've just had a really nice time getting to know you and have a chat in this beautiful place. So I think your last point about just encouraging people into engineering and not maybe focusing on having a female mentor or things like that. Take inspiration from the things you do well. Learn from the things that you maybe feel haven't gone so well, but plough that energy into a positive path forward is really important. And with all the changes coming up, the end of coal, the start of something new, there's so much opportunity out there. It's only going to get more exciting.
Very good points. Yeah, thank you, Liz. So we're sadly at the end of the event, so I just wanted to remind you all of what Dawn said at the beginning. Know your engineering story and go out there and tell everybody, and so that we can all inspire people to be engineers and to appreciate what engineers do in the world that we live in. So thank you to Chic and Engineer, who have organised this event. Thank you to you for attending this evening. And just to let you know that Chic and Engineer are running a STEM event at 1 p.m. on their YouTube channel on the 23rd of June, which is International Women in Engineering Day. So we wish you all a great International Women in Engineering Day and a great rest of the evening.